Earthlings, how you doing today? Well, welcome back to First Contact Radio. We've made it to the end of the week. The weekend is upon us. Let's jump into our cosmic weather, see what we have to deal with for today. All right, our solar wind, 340.5 kilometers per second. Planetary K index at a 1. 24-hour max is a 1. And look at this coronal hole that's opening up here. Let's take a closer look at this. This is a pretty good sized hole that's opening up. I mean, it looks like it's opening up from way up here all the way to down here. You can see a little bit where that's pretty intense. So we'll keep an eye and see on this, see what this is going to be doing over the course of the weekend. And remember, we have our big triangle up here. And you can kind of see there is what appears to be a straight edge along there and here. So maybe we have some sort of triangular shape or something that's going to open up there. Time will tell. That's all I can say. Time will tell. M-class flare possibility, low 1% chance, just like in X-class. Geomagnetic storm activity, pretty much next to nothing at the moment. All right. And then we do have a notice of an eruption. As expected, an unstable filament of magnetism curling over the sun's northeastern limb erupted yesterday. Despite the obvious energy of the blast, very little of the filament actually flew into space. So, sun is making some noises out there, nothing of significance. Astrologically, here we are at a new month. So we're dealing with the element of air for the earth sign, or the sun sign, air, Aquarius, and the sign for the moon for today is Libra, and Libra is also an air sign. So we have double air. So we have a lot of air going on today. Hopefully it's not hot air. But these are the jokes, folks. Anyway, double air going on today. Libra's about balance. The tarot card would be the card of justice, karmic balance. And the Aquarian card is the card of the star, which teaches us the lessons of meditation, seeking answers from inside to be able to determine how to fix a situation in the outside. Alright, so air and air is what we're dealing with today. Our moon phase is 71% of the way full, making its way back down to that new moon again. The Mayan Oracle, we're on the second day of our theme of the star, shining bright. Second tone is called the tone of challenge. On the first tone, tone number 1, everything is all unified, one piece. But by day number 2, or the second tone, the second position, it becomes a challenge because that energy pulls apart into its opposites. And so there's that challenge. One of the challenges to balance. Find out what is the balancing point. Perhaps in this case, these two energies that pull apart become opposite poles. So they have to polarize themselves. That's where the idea of polarization comes from, surrounding this number here. So what we have here is a phrase is I polarize in order to purify stabilizing flow. I seal the process of universal water with the lunar tone of challenge. I am guided by the power of birth. So we've stepped forward and our theme going of beauty, shining bright, and today we're going forward with that to purify that, but also kind of separate those ideas that of shining and kind of take a look at them from both sides, how we shine from both poles, how we really, look at the big picture there. All right. So there you go. On the Gregorian calendar, it is the first day of February 2013. So the year is moving right along. We've finished month number 1, and we are still here. Okay. So To follow along with the theme of consciousness that I've been doing the last couple days, this is also a piece on consciousness. This is David Chalmers, professor of philosophy. He's director for the Center of Consciousness, Australian National University, author of The Conscious Mind. So let's listen to what David has to say about consciousness.
Dave, I've always been fascinated by the concept of existence. And when I think about existence, what that means, I'm always back to consciousness. But then I see some philosophers telling me that consciousness is an illusion, doesn't really exist. You think otherwise?
I think consciousness is the thing we know about more directly than we know about anything in the world. You know, the great philosopher Descartes said, we can doubt the existence of anything in the world. I could doubt that you exist. Maybe this is just a dream. I could doubt that any of the tables and chairs around us exist. I could maybe even doubt the existence of my own body. But the one thing I can't doubt is that I'm conscious right now. I think, I am conscious, therefore I am. My consciousness is presented to me more directly than anything else in the world. If this is an illusion, then the illusion is consciousness.
Some say, okay, that's Descartes, they ridicule him. They say, now that we know about the brain, we know how the neurons work, the spikes of activity, the synapses, the chemical compositions, the complexity, that out of that complexity of 100 billion neurons and trillions of connections, consciousness can emerge. Still an illusion.
Maybe consciousness emerges from something else. I mean, this is a further question downstream, but the number one datum of the science of consciousness and the philosophy of consciousness is there is consciousness. Now, is it a primitive? Is it the first element of reality? Or is it something derivative? Is it sort of a second element of reality that somehow emerges from the brain? Is it the first element of reality? Or is it something derivative? Is it sort of a second element of reality that somehow emerges from the brain? Well, that's an open question, at least at the beginning of the discussion. But you can't question that consciousness exists.
Well, you can question that I think consciousness exists and that I seem to have a focal point, but you can show that activity at the brainstem, so-called reticular activating system, makes you focus on visual things or auditory things. So, you know, you think you're this unified consciousness, but really you have these streams of data that you're focusing on, and that's all it is.
I tell you what, I can question your consciousness. I can't be 100% certain that you are conscious right now. Maybe you're just like acting conscious and you're walking the walk, you're talking the talk. Maybe nothing's going on in there. Maybe you're a zombie. I can't question my consciousness. I'm experiencing it directly. Right, it's more real to me than anything else.
Tell me about zombies. You've really had a major impact in the philosophy of mind by talking about zombies. It's a funny word, but there's some significance there.
Well, there's a lot of kind of zombies, you know. There's the zombies in the Hollywood movies. I guess they're dead. Yeah. They come back to life. And then there's your Haitian zombies. I guess they've had some kind of voodoo poison. They lack some kind of free will. Yeah. But the zombies that philosophers are concerned with, they're just like you and me, but they lack consciousness. They walk around acting like a conscious being, talking like a conscious being, but they're not conscious.
You stick them with the pin, they say, ow.
Exactly. And you ask them, are you conscious? They say yes. And no one thinks zombies actually exist. I'm not a zombie. I don't think you're a zombie. But we can at least make sense of the idea. They seem to at least be imaginable. You know, you say, could God have created a world with zombies? To use a metaphor here for a second. It seems like God could have done that. Our world is not a world of zombies. We're not robots. We're not automata. We're conscious. That itself is something that needs explanation.
So the fact that you can conceive of a zombie means that there is a possibility of something else being needed to differentiate us from a zombie?
I would say that when God created the world, He could have created a purely physical world, just atoms in the void, no consciousness at all. That would have made sense. That's a logically consistent world. Our world isn't like that. Our world contains consciousness. That suggests that when God created the world, He had to do some more work. He had to put consciousness in. Now, subtract God from the metaphor now and just use this as a way of thinking about what exists in the world. You need the matter, then you need the consciousness.
Okay, now evolutionary theory would say, particularly evolutionary psychology, that during an evolutionary process, consciousness somehow came in, it was selected for, because if we have an awareness in our environment, we can avoid the tigers a little better, maybe plant the crops better, who knows what. But consciousness was a selected factor, maybe it emerged at random and then developed.
Well, it sounds plausible on the face of it that consciousness plays some role in evolution. The fact is, any story anyone's ever told about the evolutionary story role of consciousness has been quite obscure and doesn't really quite make sense. The trouble is, anything you want evolution to explain, how we react, what we say, and so on, I can find some explanation for how that happens that goes wholly in terms of mechanisms, algorithms in the brain, and so on. Once I spell out that story, we say, why do you need consciousness for that?
So the evolutionary story could have worked with just reflexes, maybe higher level reflexes, but same reflexes, but no inner experience.
A really complicated inner computer, really complicated inner mechanisms. Computers are getting better and better, and maybe one of these days they're going to be able to do all the things that we can do. But then the question is, why do you need consciousness?
Okay, now this brings up the word that philosophers use, qualia. What's qualia?
Qualia is the raw sensation of experience. So I look around me and I see colors, reds and greens and blues, and they feel a certain way to me. I hear the sound of music, a far-off clarinet in the distance, the smell of mothballs. All of these feel a certain way to me. They have a quality of experience, and you've got to experience them to know what they're like. I mean, you could give me the whole map of my brain, what's going on when I see colors, when I smell mothballs, and so on. But if I haven't seen a color for myself, that's not going to tell me about the quality of seeing red, of seeing green, smelling the mothballs. You actually have to experience it for yourself.
You've talked about an advanced scientist who's colorblind but knows every wavelength of every color. And what happens when she finally sees color?
Yeah, so Mary, the famous colorblind neuroscientist, spends her entire life in a black and white room. She's never seen a color, but she learns everything there is to know about the neuroscience of color. The wavelength of the light, the neurons that fire in response, the behavior it gives rise to. She can tell you all about red and green and blue. There's one incredibly important thing about color she just doesn't know. She doesn't know what it's like to see red, to see green. She doesn't know about the conscious experience of red and green. All the brain science in the world isn't going to tell her that. Imagine one day she has an operation. She leaves her room. She says, that's it. That's what it's like to see red. She's learned something new about consciousness.
What follows from that?
That, to me, suggests that there's more to consciousness than a physical process in the brain. Because you could know all there is to know about the physical processes in the brain, and you wouldn't know all there is to know about consciousness.
You've become quite well known for defining the easy problem and the hard problem. Go for it.
There's a lot of things we want to explain when we explain consciousness. People use the word in lots of different ways. You might want to explain things like how it is that my brain perceives something in the environment, and a stimulus hits my retina, my brain integrates information, I react, I point, I say something. Maybe you could give an explanation of those things in terms of circuits in my brain or algorithms in my brain, but those are just the easy problems of consciousness.
Now, we say easy, they're really hard, but relatively easy.
I'd say, a good century or two of more and more ingenious brain science is going to get us there. We're going to isolate the neural circuits, the computational mechanisms that make us behave the way we behave, do the things we do. The hard problem of consciousness is, why is all that processing accompanied by conscious experience? Why does it feel like something from the inside? Why do we have this amazing inner movie going on in our minds all the time? And it looks like the whole story you tell about neural circuits and computational mechanisms, it just leaves that question out.
Take 1,000 years into the future at the same rapid growth of science, 100,000 years, 1,000,000 years. Do you see, in principle, can the hard problem, as you've defined it, be subject to neuroscience analysis?
I don't think the hard problem of consciousness can be solved purely in terms of neuroscience. I think neuroscience has a huge contribution to make to its solution. But if we just stay with the level of neurons and processing alone, there's only so much that's going to explain. Because neurons And neuroscience is all about objective mechanisms that perform functions that ultimately issue in behavior. So if you want to say explain language, explain perception, explain memory, the things we do, the functions of the brain, that's just fine. But it just explains those functions, those behaviors. And that always leaves this further question. Why is that behavior, those functions, accompanied by consciousness? For that, we need an extra ingredient in the picture, I think. We need to bring in consciousness itself, on my view, is fundamental.
This is the UFO News with Joshua Poet.
All right, Dirk, thank you very much. This is the UFO News for today. I have 6 stories. Let's get to them. Story number 1 comes to us again from the ISS. Here we have another UFO. See it right here. Okay, so we're going to get down to it, but that's just the image. Okay, Street Cap 1. He's the guy who keeps catching, guy or gal, I don't know which one it is, but the YouTube user who keeps catching these objects, so good catches. It says, awesome how Street Cap 1 keeps an eye out for UFOs at the ISS, and he catches and posts new UFOs near the ISS every 2 to 3 days. Yes, it's real. I watch this cam myself and often see things there, but of late I've had a little time due to work. I love that this UFO at first is so close to the IS, and I'm sure that NASA radar had it and knew of it, but then the object slowly descends into the corona of the Earth, making it look like it went behind the Earth, but that is an illusion. It actually entered Earth's atmosphere. Awesome capture. Alright, so let's check it out here. Kind of get an idea of what's going on. Just going to zip ahead here. It's a long video, 8.5 minutes. Well, 8 minutes, 12 seconds. Okay. Alright, very interesting. Indeed, indeed. Alright, the link's available so you can check it out. See what you think of that. Next story here takes us to Cardiff University. Professor finds UFO existence evidence. A scientist at Cardiff University Center for Astrobiology claims that UFOs and extraterrestrials do exist after discovering a meteorite that crashed in Sri Lanka. Professor Chandra Wickaram Singh, 74, believes that aliens are true and that they may have been the creator of life on Earth, as he found seaweed fossils inside the meteorite from outer space. He asserts that the findings he got from the 2-inch wide meteorite are strong proofs that human existence came from outer space, and that what people called unidentified flying objects may have even started life on this planet. The meteorite fell like a fireball and was found near a village a few miles from Polonnaruwa City. Fragments of the meteorite were brought to the University School of Earth Science. Examination using scanning electron microscope showed algae fossils that make up seaweed. The British professor thinks that the fossil clearly shows how life on Earth started from outer space 3,800 million or 3,800 million years ago. He adds that the organisms inside the meteorite are identical to the ones found in the planet fossils. Moreover, he insists that the latest findings generate the fact that human life is associated with UFOs and that it may have been coming from other planets or galaxies. Alright. Says other findings reveal that the meteorite contains organisms that are still unknown. Okay, moving from there, we have some strange purplish stuff that showed up. Here we go.
We knew we had to look into this. Tiny purple spheres seem to appear out of nowhere, and our viewer wanted some answers.
Not in your sides, Liz Kotelik saw these strange jelly-like objects, and she joins us here in the studio to tell us what these objects just might be.
Guy, this is definitely something that I have never seen before. There were thousands of these weird little spheres piled in the middle of the desert, and although I'd like to believe that they were maybe something out of this world, we spoke to one source today who may have another explanation. It was a normal Sunday in Vail for Geraldine Vargas. Normal until she and her husband stumbled upon something kind of weird.
We were taking photos around the area, and I mean, how could you miss this? It was just like glittering in the sun.
Thousands of these tiny purple-hued spheres piled in the middle of nowhere.
It's just one of those things that you've never seen before.
They were watery. Some were translucent, and the pile was completely isolated. Geraldine was amazed, and she wanted answers.
We did email a friend of ours who's a zoologist, but she didn't know. I mean, she didn't seem to recognize what it was.
So she sent Kaga 9 these pictures, hoping we could figure it out. So we checked out the mysterious spheres for ourselves today, and they were still there. They're like gooey marbles that ooze out a water substance when we squish them. They roll, they shine, and they're just out of this world.
We're dying to know what it is.
And so are we. We spoke to Darlene Barreau, the director of marketing at Tucson Botanical Gardens, whose husband is a botanist. He said if these are something naturally occurring, they could be slime mold or jelly fungus. But no one is positive what these spheres are, and for now, all we can say for certain is that they're definitely out of the ordinary. Now, we've reached out to other sources in the biology field to try to figure out exactly what these spheres could be. So far, the only practical explanation we have is that it could be some sort of fungal growth. All
right, so perhaps it's something else, huh? I think it's alien eggs. Aliens came down and laid some eggs, maybe. Who knows? But we'll follow that story, and we'll see if any further results come up so we can all find out together. Okay, this is footage over Costa Rica captured by a pilot, and it's of a UFO apparently, allegedly going about 2,200 miles per hour. It says it was captured by commercial pilot Joseph Daniel Araya, who has more than 500 flight hours. He says he was recording with his cell phone when suddenly the camera screen saw the object moving. When he looked out of the aircraft, there was nothing, said the pilot. Okay. So it's going to come right here. There it goes. You see it goes by pretty darn fast. Okay. Video is available so you can check it out. Next one here. This is over the Urals in Russia. I don't have a date here, but there we go. We got it right up in the sky. Got a grouping of them. I see 1, 2. Skip ahead here. There you go, a little better view of them. Looks like their light's reflecting off of them. I see a third one in there. Alright, links available. 3 minutes, 48 seconds for this video. And the last one, this is a question gets asked often. Is the military working with aliens? In a new book recently released entitled Coming Clean on UFOs and ETs Part 5, Baldwin says that extraterrestrials frequently interact with humans, giving them ideas and life lessons during abductions. The book is one of a series of 6 books, a compilation of answers by Baldwin to questions by posters on his website concerning UFOs and alien beings that frequently are making contact with humans. Baldwin served in the military in the early 70s and states that he had personal contact with extraterrestrial beings during his tour of duty while stationed at a number of Army bases in the U.S. and overseas. According to Baldwin, humans have bases in the oceans and in the underground caverns, in several secret locations around the world, usually near or on military bases. Baldwin indicates that the military is working with certain alien factions to thwart renegade alien beings that have subverted third world countries and keep them in a perpetual state of war to camouflage alien activities in those countries. He also states that most governments around the world know about aliens coming to this planet and have dealings with such beings, but have kept a tight lid on those activities and dogmatically dismiss and ridicule the whole UFO phenomena and people who dare speak of it. So, it says in a series of books the author has written, he gives insight to the alien beings and shares some of the information he has received during his contacts with extraterrestrial and some of the bizarre things he saw and experienced inside alien ships during and after his military career. So, interesting book. Check it out. Check it out. There you have it. That's our UFO news for today. I'll be back. Stay tuned.
What if our government was responsible for some of the greatest crimes against this nation? Would you really want to know? These are big questions, but these questions deserve answers. It's time to demand the truth.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of them.
9/11 was an inside job. Kennedy was killed by the CIA. Jimmy Carter saw UFO. Answers to secrets you need to know. So wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. The evidence is overwhelming. Step past your fear, take a look. Illuminati lies keep growing, but they're losing from your eyes. And wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. What would our founding fathers say if they were alive today? Must be turning in their graves. Redcoats are coming, big brother's watching. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. What if by land and two if by sea? And I on the opposite shore will be ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. When a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Patriots arise. It's time to demand the truth.
All right, all right, all right. Demanding the truth, very important. That's what we seek to do each and every day, not only in this country but around the world. So yesterday, gave you information about a situation with Obama and the courts. Here's a little bit more detail on this information. The AP reports that President Obama bypassed the Senate when he appointed several politicians to the National Labor Relations Board last January, and last Friday, a D.C. Court of Appeals decided that the appointments were in violation of the U.S. Constitution. According to the article, Obama made the recess appointments after Senate Republicans blocked his choices for an agency they contended was biased in favor of unions. Obama claims he acted properly because the Senate was away for the holidays on a 20-day recess. The Constitution allows for such appointments without Senate approval, when Congress is in recess. President Obama played politics a bit here by trying to appoint these members while the Senate was away on holiday, but Capitol Hill lawmakers were carrying on shenanigans of their own. They gavelled in and out of the session for short periods of time just to make sure that Obama would not be able to get the appointments through while they were in recess. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit set a precedent with their ruling that the nominations were in violation. The article also stated that the three-judge panel flatly rejected arguments from the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel, which claimed that the President has discretion to decide that the Senate is unavailable to perform its advice and consent function. Allowing the President to define the scope of his own appointment power would eviscerate the Constitution's separation of powers, Chief Judge David Senil wrote of the 46-page ruling. This watershed decision has caused a lot of hullabaloo in Washington, and the Justice Department has alluded to the fact that they will try to get the decision overturned by the Supreme Court. With this ruling, the D.C. Circuit has soundly rejected the Obama administration's flimsy interpretation of the law, and it will go a long way towards restoring the constitutional separation of powers, said Senator Orrin Hatch, Republican from Utah. So that's good news. So that's a little bit more of information, a little more details about what you heard. We'll see how it goes from here. We know how these things work, right? The wheels of process of change can be slow. Okay, this is piece here. Brother Nathaniel. Why Jews must believe in Jesus. Brother Nathaniel always has something interesting to say. Let's hear this. Here we go.
Why don't Jews believe in Jesus? Isn't he the promised Messiah as foretold by the prophets in the Old Testament? He most certainly is. Problem is, Jews have replaced the Old Testament as its central religious document with the Talmud instead. The Talmud is essentially reactionary, a rabbinic codification of rules and regulations, serving to refute the messiahship of Jesus Christ. Yet a brief overview of the Old Testament clearly proves that Jesus Christ is indeed the Jewish Messiah. The role of the Messiah was to conquer death and undo the evil that Satan wrought in the Garden of Eden. The Messiah was predicted to come during the final days of King David's dynasty, which ended during the rule of Herod at the time of Christ's holy birth. The Messiah would be a prophet like unto Moses, whose new covenant, superseding the old, would require mandatory obedience by all Jews. The Messiah would be born in Bethlehem of a virgin, and his name would be called God with us, Emmanuel, indicating his incarnation. The Messiah would come before the destruction of the Second Temple, which occurred in 70 A.D., and the Messiah would bear And the Messiah would bear the sins of the world and resurrect on the third day, creating a whole new race of humanity, the Israel of God, the church, made up of Jews and Gentiles, called by a new name, Christians. But these proofs are not the only reason why Jews should believe in Jesus. You see, there are 3 curses on Jewry that each and every Jew must deal with. The curse of the fig tree, the curse of desolation, and the curse of deicide. When Jesus Christ saw no fruit on a fig tree, a symbol of the Jewish people, he cursed it, saying, "From henceforth may no fruit be borne on you forever." And sure enough, the next day, the fig tree was completely withered. When Christ was about to be delivered up by Jewry to be crucified, he pronounced a curse upon Jerusalem. "From henceforth your house is left unto you desolate." And when Christ stood before Pontius Pilate, who wished to let him go, the Jews cried out, "Crucify him! Crucify him! His blood be upon us and upon our children." And so it has come to pass. Every single Jew, by virtue of corporate guilt, has the curse of deicide upon him. Sarah Silverman, Jewish comedian so-called, would like to double that curse upon her already accursed head.
everybody blames the Jews for killing Christ, and then the Jews try to pass it off on the Romans. I'm one of the few people that believes it was the blacks. I don't care. Good. I hope the Jews did kill Christ. I'd do it again. I'd fucking do it again in a second.
Bottom line, there is no enduring fruit to be garnered from Jewry. Yet our once Christian nation is now ruled by Jews. But only desolation is left in the wake of Jewish rule, as evidenced by thousands of Gentiles who have lost their lives fighting wars with the Jews abroad. And the deicidal curse has spread to countless Gentiles through the Jewish-owned media that ridicules belief in Jesus Christ. As a former Jew, now an Orthodox Christian, I call upon all Jews to repent, nullifying the curses, and embrace the Lord Jesus Christ as their Savior. I did. Why don't they?
All right, very good. Interesting words, as always, from Brother Nathaniel. All right, here's the 3-minute news for today. Suspicious observers.
Good morning, folks. The earthquake watch rolls on and the significant quakes continue. In the first 29 and a half days of 2013, there were 4 significant quakes. There have been 5 in the last 36 hours. The latest is the third of those to strike the Santa Cruz Islands, actually caused a 1-meter tsunami that is of absolutely no concern. Cyclone Philang, just hugging that coastline. This is quite the rain event. Europe, this low drives the Atlantic moisture east over land and veers north, bringing precipitation to over half the continent. Temperature in eastern Europe will be very cold by next week. While northwestern Australia swelters, it is a bit more mild southwest and in New Zealand. 24-hour precipitation map shows Sydney took a pounding, and I wish I could say it was over, but more storms are on the way. Zooming in on India, where cold isn't unusual unless it's in the subcontinent, where the Met Office was incredulous of initial reports until confirming multiple deaths from boulder-sized hail. Tornadoes, flooding, hail, and winter storm conditions are making their last stand in the United States today. On the 24-hour temperature delta, you can see the East Coast has cooled off significantly. Let's see why while we make some predictions. These big blue lows spin counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere. Front edge pulled north and heated us up first. Now the backside is frosting the land, pulling due south. When the Pacific low moves east, its leading edge will also bring warm air north. That's precisely what the Weather Channel expects to happen by Monday. Russian neutron monitor takes a jump. This appears to confirm the Bartol neutron data from spaceship Earth, but again, Mu1 network shows falling density. 2 gamma bursts last night, both from way up north, one from Ursa Major and the other came out of the constellation Leo. Yesterday's Sun story was this filament eruption. I showed the broad scope of the ejecta, and now NASA's Enlil spiral confirms Earth impact expected. NOAA's Enlil spiral suggests that will happen Sunday. A few hours after that eruption, a much larger northeastern filament snaking beside the dark coronal hole destabilized and released. Satellite images are missing, but you can still see the CME coming out of that top left location where it erupted. NASA's Enlil spiral shows that it will completely miss Earth. The filament eruption's on the left, but did anyone notice the central destabilization? It will be easier to see now, happened right after the large filament released. It's not big enough to produce a coronal mass ejection, very small. Its split and recoil back into the lower corona was beautiful, however. For the first time since finding this chart, I can correlate it to activity I see on the Sun. First, the large dark northern coronal holes are the red areas shifting down, and the green are the coronal holes on the south that we saw last week. Now as you look here, imagine where that southern filament was in relation to the holes. Folks, this is still new to me, but it appears very clear that the umbral magnetic field position related to the coronal hole magnetics was changing drastically just before that filament erupted. We'll watch for more correlations. Quick look at this intensity gram shows decaying spots headed to the right, eyes on the northeastern limb. One looks to be developing and the other might already have complexity. So to recap, we had a coronal hole stream set to impact Earth, a CME from a filament eruption coming as well. The earthquake uptick has been solid so far. Let's hope we can confirm the watch correlation without any more injuries. Eyes open. No fear. It's 6:15 a.m. Eastern Time, and that's the news. Be safe, everyone.
All right, very good. Very good indeed. Okay, so You remember Tricia Mccannon. She's been on the show a number of times. Last time she was on the show was prior to December 21st. She was talking about the trip she was taking to Chichen Itza, where she was going to be on the 21st. And most recently, I did an interview with her. So we're going to get to this interview. I'm going to play a good portion of it, and then the interview itself is uploaded so you can listen to the thing in its entirety. Just follow the link. Anyway, this is a really good interview. Her explaining what went on, what's going on now that we've entered this new phase. So I think you're going to enjoy this and enjoy what Tricia has to say. All right, here we go. Hello, this is Josh Poet, First Contact Radio, and I have another guest today. This is Tricia Mccannon. You've heard her here before on First Contact Radio and other stations and networks across the world. She is back from her visit to Chichen Itza for the 2012 December 21st experience. And last time she was here, she was talking about the mysteries. She's an author of a number of books we're going to talk about. Anyway, let's get on to talking with Tricia. Tricia, welcome to First Contact Radio. Thanks for being here again. How are you?
Oh, Josh, it's always a wonderful thing to do your show. I so enjoy it, and thank you again for having me back on. You're absolutely right that, here we are in 2013. A lot of us never even believed we'd make it here. And I was one of those keynote speakers that went down to Chichen Itza at the temple or the pyramid of Kukulkan or Quetzalcoatl in the Mayan lands for this famous Synthesis 2012 event that was celebrating the change of the 5,125-year Mayan calendar that is moving from one age to another age. So I was down there really all before Christmas. I literally flew back to Atlanta where I live on Christmas Eve night. So it was quite an experience.
Sounds like it was really awesome.
Yeah, I don't know how many people were there. I would guess there were at least 50,000. But, they didn't all stay there. Many people came down and they spent a few days in Cancun. And so the morning of the 21st or the 22nd, people who were staying there, we began ceremony at 6:30 or 7 in the morning with shamans and the indigenous people, and we kind of had the place to ourselves until about noon when some of the tour buses started arriving, and then there were, wave after wave after wave, and I think I stayed till about 3 or 4 on the 21st. But it's still such a big place that it was, even though there were lots of people, it was never crowded. You'd see circles of people dressed in white. Our group from Synthesis 2012 conference put on by Michael D. Martinez, we dressed in white and did all sorts of prayer and dance and ceremony and smudging and sage. We had shamans like Hunbat's men there and one named Oro and a number of other elders, Mayan elders that had come for the event. But there were also amazing musicians and dancers that had come from around the world, speakers like myself. I think Nikki Scully was there. She's written some books on Egypt, and Hunbat's men spoke, as I said. And it was a really wonderful, amazing event. I was so honored to be there. And I was with people from Finland, from England, from Germany, from Canada, from America. It was a real international event. They came from everywhere. There were about 1,000 people at the conference. So it was really a gathering of light workers from around the world.
Awesome. What was really neat about the experience from my perspective was being able to see that. World Unity 2012 TV was broadcasting not only that location, but 39 other locations around the globe. So it was really cool. I got to see you do your talk out there, and a lot of other people did, and so that was awesome.
Well, I love that. And I want to say also my friend J.J. Hurtak, who wrote The Keys of Enoch, he had a conference going on in Cancun with his future Paradigms Institute. Alan Steinfeld, who's a wonderful friend of mine in New York, who has New Realities TV. He was there. Deborah Moldav from the World Peace Prayer Society, who is the liaison with the UN. She was there. And, of course, Desiree, J.J. Hurtak's wife. So, and I think there were about a half a dozen people that recorded a video of the six of us each speaking about what was going on. And I have no idea if that's up on YouTube, but hopefully it makes it.
Awesome. So here's the big question then I want to ask you. December 21st came and went. There is multiple versions of what was going to happen on that day. One of them was the Hollywood version, and a lot of people believed the Hollywood version, and when the world wasn't destroyed, a lot of those people just figured it was a big hoax and that was the end of it. However, for those paying attention, we know that there was something that happened, a shift that happened. So what I'd like to focus on and talk to you about are some of the places now that we've gone since December 21st with the new beginning of this new cycle. Where are we going? Where is our energy going? What are the things that we need to do as we begin this new cycle?
That's a really great question. And, you know, it is interesting. I get emails from people all around the world every day at Tricia Mccannon speaks at yahoo.com. That's one of my emails. If our listeners are interested in emailing. But I did get emails from people that were like, oh, my gosh, we're still here. What happened? They somehow thought this whole thing, exactly as you said, was going to be the total end of the world. Well, I think in truth, coming up to it, nobody knew what was going to happen. I think this is the honest truth. We did not know whether or not it would signal an actual day of a pole shift or a meteor shower or some kind of celestial activity or a solar mass ejection from the sun that could, fire our electrical grids. The truth was it was a mystery, and the truth is that we are still in the mystery. However, I think to just give us some ground to stand upon, it helps to talk about the actual science of what is going on right now. And, I speak all over the world about the great spiritual mysteries and what the masters taught, the lost years of Jesus and his secret teachings. I'm a clairvoyant and a clairaudient. I've had visitations from angels and masters and higher dimensional beings since I was a little girl. And I've done over 6,000 readings for people all around the world, as well as numerous levels of healing because I'm trained as a hypnotherapist and in voice dialogue and holographic repatterning and all of these things that help people to release the things that are blocking them and helping them to, kind of get to what their life's mission is. So this is just a little bit of background for the listeners that don't know anything about me. But I'm writing actually a new book about this whole galactic alignment, and so the science behind it is very important. What actually happens is that we have something called the precession of the equinoxes, and the ancients within the mystery schools called it the Great Year. It basically is the period of time, 25,920 years, that it takes that if we're on planet Earth at the spring equinox, which is March 23rd, and we watch the sunrise and we see what is the celestial backdrop behind the sun, it's obviously one of the 12 signs of the zodiac. That's what the zodiac is. It's the flat elliptical plate, they call it the ecliptic, upon which all the planets in our solar system move like a record player. So over a period of time, the celestial backdrop begins to shift. And instead of shifting forward, so that the 12 astrological ages are like you see them in the newspaper when you read your horoscope, they precess backwards. So since the sun appears to move 1 degree every 72 years, and if you take 12 into the 360 degrees of a circle, 12 signs into 360, that means each one of these astrological signs is about 30 degrees fat or wide. So if you do the math, 30 degrees times 72 years, you come up with each astrological age being 2,160 years. if you multiply that by 12 signs or 12 ages, then you have the great year, which is, we can say, roughly 26,000 years, but to be specific, it's 25,920 years. So we, of course, have been in the age of Pisces, and we're moving into the age of Aquarius. So that in itself is an exciting thing, but there's far more to this celestial clock that we move in a large cycle, not just around, but in regard to the galaxy or the galactic equator. We drop below the galactic equator for 13,000 years, and then we cross the galactic equator moving up. And then like a big sine wave, we move above the galactic equator for 13,000 years, and then we begin to drop down, and 13,000 years later, we fall below the galactic equator. So when the continent of Atlantis, crashed and burned in the big way, that was about 11,500 years ago. And we know, scientists tell us, geologists, that the water table all over the planet rose some 400 feet in about a month. So obviously something catastrophic happened that suddenly melted the poles or made the land go down and the water levels rise. So we can see that geologically. So this is when we fell below the galactic equator. Well, obviously, since we started crossing through it 13,000 years ago, and the fall didn't happen until 11,500 years, it took 1,500 years before there was a disaster, a physical disaster and a pole shift. But we're in a similar place now, except instead of falling below the galactic equator, where we fall into the density of real kind of third-dimensional dualistic thinking, we begin to move above the galactic equator. So what was 2012? There are several answers to that. It was the midpoint of our 1,000 years or 900 years of passing through the center of the galaxy. In other words, if you think of the galaxy as a horizontal line and our solar system as a vertical line, this creates the solar cross, the celestial cross. Our sun is, of course, the local solar energy, but our sun winds up aligning with the center of the galaxy. And the center of the galaxy is connected with basically, like, let us say, the great central sun. We can think of it as a great galactic computer in the sky. So this galactic sun sends down new energetic codes to the center of our galaxy. Our galaxy sends it out to our sun and any other solar systems that happen to be crossing the galactic equator. And then our sun sends it out to all the planets in the solar system. And part of what the sun sends out is that that all the planets reverse their poles. So when we're below the galactic equator, the North Pole is the way that we've known it, the South Pole is the way that we've known it. But then when we cross over it, the poles begin to melt, the ice sheets melt as we're seeing today, and the northern polarity points turn to southern, the southern turn to northern, and when the balance is tipped, then we do have a pole shift, and the poles are literally going to reverse because we're going to be at a different polarity level. So where we are now in 2013 is we're in the suspended animation place. And what I mean by that is that when we were below the galactic equator, clearly the North Pole and the South Pole were what they are. Now we're in the place where the magma whirls inside of the planet that normally spin clockwise have now reversed, and they are going counterclockwise. This means ultimately several things. We're going to have a pole shift, whether it's in 3 months, 3 years, 30 years, 300 years. It's probably more like 3 to 30 years because we can see how fast the poles are melting. But no one knows exactly when that's going to take place. And this is pure science. There was a whole wonderful show on Nova about this, 10 years ago. And then they yanked it, I guess, because they didn't want to alarm people. But this is just, without any esoteric anything, this is the pure science behind it. Now, when the planet, since the internal magma normally spins clockwise and our planet spins clockwise, the question becomes, when our magma begins to spin counterclockwise, what is that going to do to our planet? Well, ultimately, I think what it will do is it'll stop us, and then we're going to begin to reverse and spin counterclockwise. Now, historically, when you go back and study the mysteries, and so many of these records, of course, got destroyed with the Library of Alexandria that had 700,000 books and scrolls, and of course the Muslims and the Christians both burned that incredible repository of knowledge. But there still are records that talk about the fact that there is a time when the sun rises in the west and sets in the east, and a time when the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. So how do we know this? If you go back to ancient Egypt, at the very last, there's the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, the New Kingdom, and then the last of the kings of Egypt, or pharaohs, were the Ptolemaic kings, and these were the kings of the pharaohs that came from Greece. If you remember Philip of Macedonia that had Alexander the Great, and Alexander, if you ever saw that movie, Alexander turns to his friend Ptolemy, one of his generals, and says, when this is all over, what country do you want, Ptolemy? And Ptolemy says, I want Egypt. So he says, okay. So after Alexander died and Persia and the other spoils of war were divided up by his generals, Ptolemy got Egypt. So the last of the kings of Egypt were Ptolemaic, and Cleopatra, for example, was the very last one. So the second of the Ptolemies, which I think was Ptolemy Philadelphus, and this is probably about 270, 290 BC, he asked the high priest Manetho at the temple of Heliopolis. Helio is the sun, polis means city. That's a Greek name, Heliopolis. The Egyptians called it the city of On, which is mentioned in the Bible. He asked this high priest to go and get the king's list of how old Egypt actually was. And Manetho brought back these very careful records that said that ancient Egypt went back some 36,000 years. For 12,000 years, the gods ruled. For 18,000 years, the demigods ruled, half immortals and half mortals. And that the humans got to rule from about 3114 BC on, which is when the Mayans say that last age that just ended first began. So this is when we think Egyptian history started. We sort of have conveniently discarded the gods and the demigods, and we only pick up with recording the humans. But during that period of 36,000 years, according to the records, the poles had reversed 4 times, and that the sun had risen in the west, set in the east, and then risen in the east and set in the west. So, of course, it's hard to know exactly when it happened, but we understand that shortly before the fall of Atlantis, this pole reversal did take place, and the sun shifted position. So, this is not something we're not going to survive. We've obviously survived it many times in the past.
Okay, very good. I'm going to leave it right there. It's a really good interview, right? So there's a bunch more to it. The link's available so you can check it out. That brings us to our meditation to close things out for today. So go ahead and close your eyes. Relax. Take a deep breath. Let's contemplate all that you have learned over the course of this week, in all the different places you have gone, with all the people that you have met. Contemplate all that you're going to learn over the course of this weekend. Contemplate all that people around you are going to learn. And just contemplate the idea that everyone is learning together. that whatever we experience in life, we are all experienced together. The good, the bad, it's all part of this life experience. For we are all part of the same consciousness. And imagine ourselves working together to create what we want as a society in this country and around the world. Let's imagine sending love out from our heart chakra all around the world. And imagine this love hitting each and every individual around the world, filling their life with hope, positivity. Imagine that all of your chakras are open from the bottom of the spine up: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, and indigo. And let's just think a good thought for everybody in the world. Wish everybody a good weekend. And we'll leave it at that. Sometimes simplicity is the best. Take a deep breath. On the count of 3, let's bring our energy and attention back to the present moment. Exhale. 3, coming back to the present moment filled with confidence. Take another deep breath. Exhale. 2, coming back to the present moment filled with faith. One more deep breath. Exhale. 1, coming back to the present moment. Happy, healthy, and whole. Happy, healthy, and whole. There you have it. That's our show for today. Thanks very much for being here. Have an awesome weekend. Be safe, whatever you do. And I'll be back on Monday with more news and information. Talk to you soon. Peace. I'm out of here.